We're back with episode 3 of Deep in the Mulm. Sounds like you all out there are really enjoying this format, and we're having fun with it. So welcome back for another episode. I think we got some fun things to talk about today, fish related, but I'm sure that Corey and Randy will take us down some rabbit hole of gaming or something that I know nothing about, but we're here to have fun anyway. So yeah, Randy, you want to kick us off with, I think you had something that you wanted to ask us.
Well, I think that's a challenge, and I refuse to divert from the fish topic. So,
all right, okay, there we go.
I will refrain. No, I don't know. How did episode 2 do? Like in relation to episode 1, or like people legitimately watching it? Yeah.
Let me tell you, in 1 week time.
I mean, I like the comments. People, seemingly from the comments seem to be enjoying it.
Comments are great. Yeah. Comments are great. The jokes are great. Poking fun at us, love it. I like all that. Just because I think so many times, like especially for Corey and myself, when we're making regular videos, like you have to be kind of structured and that kind of thing, and this just allows us to just have a fun conversation and
structure. I accidentally make my videos.
I was gonna say that's why you guys don't let me make videos.
I just finished a video that took me. I had to look back in the dates because I've been filming it so long. I'm into it for 7 weeks to make this video. The people are just gonna be like, "That video sucked." Be like, "Oh, glad I put 7 weeks into this."
Right.
The Deep in the Mulm podcast number 2 episode has had 1,747 viewers with 97 comments. To put that in perspective, episode 1, 2,500 comments. So been out a week longer, obviously. So maybe some more people have been able to watch that, or they saw it once and like, I don't need to see it again. Could go either way on that. We'll see in the data.
Don't blame
And we got 106 comments. So it kind of leans more like that. They watch this and go, not for me, because the comments are almost the same. So we'll have to see how this pans out over the next couple weeks. It could just die a horrible death. So
I think also when we look at some of the other member-only content, like the presentations, these do quite well. So in this time frame,
in this time frame, because if you look at speaker from 3 months ago, like they'll have more views because people had more time to sit down and digest it. Where not everyone's got an extra hour to 90 minutes in the last 7 days.
Yes.
So
I do feel a little deprived that your little floating light bulb behind you is not on. I feel like that should be.
I'm pretty sure Zenzo turned it off, and I never turned it back on.
Well, let's turn that bad boy back because it's just sitting there and it like wants to be illuminated.
Yeah.
Gotta
get that on a Casa timer.
Well, look at you got like a nice little like reflection too, kind of going across the table. I like it.
It's like a candle.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for episode 3, everybody.
It accentuates how white my face is with this light. Like this light is kind of blowing it out a little bit, but if I go down too much, then the whole scene gets too dark. I haven't.
Can you change the color profile on that light?
No.
Okay.
$1,000 light, and I can't change it. I can change the color profile on the camera a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's a battle because if I fix my skin tone, and so by turning it more orange, the back gets super orange. All of a sudden, the teeth are getting orange. The eye whites are getting orange. And so it's because of the way that I have the warm tones on the background. It wants to compensate for that. And so, it's kind of, I'm fine with it. I'll just look like I'm a ghost most days.
It kind of looks like your Seattle tan, though. Like, to be fair, I mean, I
don't
didn't really
think
see
I'm
anything wrong.
I don't think I'm this fair skinned in person, but what do I? Maybe it'll fix if I turn it off. See now you can see there's some pigment in my skin.
Yeah, that's creepy.
There's some pigment.
Right so, definitely blows you out a little bit.
All right,
I'll just play with it all. I'll play with it all stream now. We're all recording it.
You're just going to keep changing shades.
That's
amazing.
Chameleon.
So this is your version of Zenzo finding 17 spots to sit in last episode.
Oh yeah. Yes. Afterwards, I'm like, but Corey understands because he's got those skylights and he's got to move around or had to cover them to not have that happen. So
you haven't even had it where you're here in the summer and the skylights on you. So not only do you get the sun, but then incredibly hot. You're like baking.
Right.
So that's why I had to block them out. I didn't block them out in that room because, that would cost an extra $30. And I haven't done it yet. So
that's right.
Because you may be a vampire, but you're a vampire who is frugal with your money. I appreciate it.
Very
You just don't go
frugal.
there. You just don't.
I
go
do
there,
miss
right?
I do miss having daylight, like in the fish room. My old fish room, you could at least see like, oh, it's getting dark out. Because as Zenzo even noticed, it's like you come out and you have no idea if it's going to be, is it light
Yeah.
or dark? Like what time is it? Which allows me to work incredibly late, but also there's times I go in and it's dark and I come out and it's dark. And it's just like the day
It's like
is
a movie
gone.
theater. So like when you go in a
Yeah.
movie theater and you
Mhm.
go in at 2 p.m. and you come out, it's like, whoa. It's kind of like that with Corey's, where like because there's no windows or anything, and it's like, oh,
And I
Zenzo,
blocked
here-
out the one source, the skylight.
So,
Yeah.
so Zenzo, you've worked with Corey long enough now where if I pretended to be Corey and said, hey, Zenzo, I'm setting up my fish room and I just read this study about how casinos increase productivity by making it so you can't tell if it's day or night. That's what I'm going to do to my fish room to increase my own productivity. Does that not sound like something that Corey would tell you?
I would
about his
believe it.
plans?
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
I'm
Corey's
already
laughing.
I'm ready to research it. It sounds
Yeah.
legit.
Oh, by the way, sparkling water of the week
Ooh,
is strawberry mango from Trader Joe's.
mango. Ooh.
Sounds good.
Really
But I
good.
don't drink sparkling water.
Nice.
Really good. Yeah.
So I think what they try to do for the Lexington Trader Joe's is they said, let's try and make it feel like we are in one of the most densely packed California cities that has a Trader Joe's, and let's give it the worst parking lot layout possible.
That's
And
every Trader Joe's.
There's actually a really funny YouTube out there
Yes.
where some guy is just completely making fun of how they design Trader Joe's parking lots. And
Yeah.
it's like, how is this hitting home so closely? Like
And
having
then
gone to
all
Trader
of
Joe's in
the-
3 states.
And then all of the people in the comments of that, because I saw that video, they're all like, yeah, my Trader Joe's in New Jersey and mine in Washington and California. And it's I think what it is Trader Joe's, their business, they're not going into normal like grocery store areas, right? They're usually inhabiting some smaller retail space that they're turning into a grocery store that wasn't really designed to have hundreds of people coming in every hour. They're not used to that kind of traffic. Maybe
They're not the anchor store. Typically,
They're not an
grocery
anchor
stores
store,
are always
right.
anchor stores, and they get a certain rent rate because you're the anchor. So, like, if we were to go somewhere, we're still not big enough to be the anchor. But if you're the anchor, you'll get priority spot in the plaza. You'll get a little bit cheaper rent. Usually, you have better bargaining power, and you can actually dictate sometimes what can and can't move in to the entire complex. So, like Petco's and PetSmarts do that, for instance, and yeah, so that's them not being an anchor. You're getting the lesser parking. You're getting all these things. They're saving a ton of money usually. But I will say the one in Everett has corrected it. So they went from the worst parking lot ever, as all of them have, to now they're in the mall. And so they could park thousands of people.
Yeah.
I haven't been there yet, but my wife has and
Where-
said it was amazing.
Where was the old Everett Trader Joe's at? Oh, it was next to that. Oh, I know. It was next to the
next to like a
Bible.
dollar store.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. Okay, yeah, that was a terrible spot.
It was exceptionally bad. You're like, I think only 11 people could park here. I think 11 people work here. How is that?
Is that how we revitalize America's like derelict malls? Is you stick a Trader Joe's in it, and then all of a sudden the mall's like rejuvenated?
So I don't think it's a terrible idea. So there's actually a great mall, a South Center Mall in Washington, and as my business brain can't shut off, I had to study it while I went there like 6 months ago. They put in a bowling alley so think of this little mall. They put in a bowling alley. They put in a library. They put in lots of eateries. There's like the dollar store, and I think that's the way to go. So I think you're onto something with, instead of making these shopping centers so the trend I hate is shopping center, put in a grocery store, delete all the parking so you can put in a drive-through and a gas station. Hate it. So there's nowhere to park. Instead, move that grocery store to like the mall area, unlimited parking. Now you've got a reason to go there, because that's always been the problem with any retail business that you're selling stuff. You kind of need a reason to go there. Yes, you might come to shop at Aquarium Co-op because you know us, but if you don't know us, it's better if there is like a restaurant or something in the area to bring you here. Then you might go, hey, I'm thinking about getting an aquarium. And so I do think that is one way to revitalize malls, but mall structure, because we have retail partner stores and malls and stuff, is terrible for business in that you have to give them a percentage of your revenue. So you have to pay them rent, and then it's 8 to 12% of everything you sell. We get courted by malls fairly often. Are you sure, Aquarium Co-op? We'd get you a lot more customers. You should come to the mall. Like, we are not giving 8 to 12% of what goes to that register to somebody else. Like, we would not make it. So, yeah.
I'm just picturing riding on one of those little like neon bear car things, and like you drive it into Trader Joe's, do your shopping, and then drive out on the little bear. That feels like a good activity. I mean, they already have the little kid card, and they hide the little figurine inside for the kids to find. So let's just take it to the next level, and then everybody's just bouncing into each other, which not really that far off from current state with shopping carts. So,
well, as much as we'd love to talk about parking at Trader Joe's, let's talk about some fish stuff. Here I am reeling us back in here.
No, we're not. We're not done.
So, Randy, you had asked me, or I think you had asked us to talk about. You had asked us to pick something about the hobby that we thought was cool for the week, or
so this is a new segment, for this week. If it goes horribly, then we'll drop it. I'm going to steal this from Vince Venturella, who does a show called Warhammer Weekly. He's been doing it every single Wednesday for like 10 years. This guy, and Corey actually, no, this is the guy that you complimented. You were like, man, too bad he didn't do Aquarium.
No, I know the guy's really good. I've also been doing it. I want to know if he's ever missed an episode. If he said like, I've missed some episodes.
He just did their anniversary episode, and he had like clips from like first episode all the way to like present. Yeah. And he says he didn't miss a single one. Like he was sick. He's been on the road.
Impossible.
I might be misquoting him, but I'm pretty sure he said
they must just live a different life than I do, because I could see like, oh, you've missed 2 in 10 years, but never, because that's 520 episodes, right?
You know what else is funny is that he and his wife are big time dog people. They don't have kids, so kind of similar to like you and Katie.
Are they running a business?
Yeah. He works as like a project manager for, I think, like a insurance
podcasting service.
So that could help, right? So if you have a job where you can turn your brain off, you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 or something.
His the leak.
I didn't see it. I just
somebody just gotta. I'll pull it out in a little bit here once I say this. No, his day job is completely outside of the hobby. Okay. So he doesn't experience the same burnout that you guys do of, making content for the hobby, and then also that is your hobby, that is your job. So it is
still never a conflicting birthday, anniversary, vacation. Like, I've had some good runs, but 10 and never missing. Never an internet outage, never a storm, never a.
Hey, I'll go back.
Props to him, because I can't go 10. I could probably only go 2. I can't
get 10. After this call, he loves our super glue. So
he does love our super glue. That's the only reason I knew who he was.
Yeah, right.
Well, hold on. Oh, pick of the week. Yes. So he does a segment. They do a segment, pick of the week, where he and his guests will have their pick for the week. And it's basically something related to that hobby of what's something that you want to shout out so people can check it out or research it or experience it, whatever. And so I think that's something cool for us to do. Tropical fish hobby is pretty expansive. So, it could be an article. It could be a specific fish. It could be a content creator. It could be a product. Obviously it's easy to default and call out an Aquarium Co-op one. So I will start this week.
Start us off.
And my shout out is to, oh my goodness, what is this channel's name? This is actually what happens to his guest too. Lowell's Fish Lab.
Lowell's Fish Lab.
Is that his channel? Yep. So Lowell's Fish Lab just came out with a video, and this is the first one of his I've watched end to end. The other ones I've kind of perused, and they're also good. But this one is about him and his experience breeding a specific Epistogramma species. And the level of detail that he goes through in this, maybe it's like 10 or 12 minutes, but like the videography, his explanations in the background, it's insightful, but there's also a little bit of humor injected into it. It had me from end to end, very captivating, and to the point where it's like, man, I want to play with some Epistogrammas again. Like, it was really, really good, really intelligent. How he broke everything down, I thought that was phenomenal. So if you haven't checked out Lowell's Fish Lab, his content is far greater than the 25,000 subs he has right now, which 25,000 subs is nothing to, wag a stick at. That's great. That's awesome.
These days, it's hard to get to 25K even.
Sure.
Unless you're doing shorts.
Unless you're doing shorts and that crap. Yeah.
But his content, though, it's phenomenal. The quality is so amazing. And then on top of that, Was it like Make More Fish is his Etsy store, but he also does some really awesome 3D prints. And I have one that I'm going to set up for the Rosie Barbs, but I've got one of the fry trays. And so far,
Did you print it or did you buy it?
I bought it. That's before I got the 3D printer up and running.
Yeah.
That's really good. So he's kind of like a dual threat, right? I don't know what his actual like day job is, but he's making some good fish products, and he's also making some outstanding content. So yeah, Lowell's Fish Lab is Randy's pick of the week.
He's actually
I know his day job actually. His day job is number 2 pencil designer.
Nice.
Like, number 2 pencils. They don't get a lot of upgrades, but he's working on them.
Interesting.
I don't know if this is. You're delivered it really well, Corey. I don't know if that's a joke.
Lowell will be speaking to members, so everyone that's able to watch this and hear it. He will be our speaker on May 17th.
What if my counter to your joke is, wait a second, they're out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
No.
I did give Lowell a heads up yesterday. I sent him an email because like next week or in the next like 10 days, I'll be putting out the video that I've been working on. It took 7 weeks, and it features his breeding or his fry raising system. And every time it absolutely slams his store, then people are like angry because they can't buy it. And he's like, he's been buying more and more.
No, did you see what he put on his website? It says something about stock issues, blame Corey. It's right on his landing page. Yeah, check it out. It's right on his landing page of his Etsy, and it says something about like, sorry about out of stock, blame Corey.
Yeah. So I did give him a heads up. He says he's got his printers going 24/7. He had to buy more printers. He even bought a CNC machine to cut the pieces of foam for him. And so he's kind of nerding out on building this little empire of things to
did he buy a Did he buy a Cricut or did he buy a CNC machine? Because I think a Cricut's kind of a CNC machine.
He said CNC, but I didn't like interrogate him to be like, hey, I'm going to need a model number on this thing. I don't know anything about CNC machines. So.
I want the model number. Number. Let's do it. That's impressive, though. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's good. And so to talk a little bit more about that story, he started prototyping that and he sent it to me probably like 2 years ago. And I totally poo-pooed it and handed it to Dean and be like, I don't have time for this crap because it was more in a rough shape. Like it was still pretty close to what we have today, but a lot of stuff gets sent to me of like, hey, Corey, could you make this, give me all your feedback and do it? And I don't have the time. Then Dean worked with him for like a solid year. And then I was like, wow, this thing's actually pretty good now after Dean's feedback and other people's feedback. And so now it's at a point where it's actually just kind of amazing. And his plan was to like just let anyone print it for free. And I was like, yeah, that model never works though, because people only work so hard for free. And so even if like, no matter if it's an app or just something in the world that you like, if they're making even $1 at scale, that keeps them innovating. And so he's been making more and more things, like more little spawning things that maybe would have never come out. But now you can basically pay, so you could either buy it on Etsy, which is sold out half the time, or you can pay $5 on his Patreon and it lets you download all the files. You can print them yourself. You can print 1,000 of them if you want. You can't sell the file, and I think you can't sell the actual things. You can give them to friends, but you can't be like, well, I'm just going to set my farm of 100 printers and I'm going to sell them on eBay all day. Like you can't do that.
Bitcoin farm.
Right. But you can, give them to friends and do all that. So it's also very rewarding if you follow my trajectory, buying one for like $45 and then you end up buying $1,000 printer. But then you're like, I clicked print and like a day and a half later, I just saved myself $45. And, the fact that you can actually print them now and make multiples, it is rewarding. But for me, as a 3D printing guy now, when I got that, I was like, this is 3D printed? Like, this is way too good. Because if you just Google 3D printing, you're going to see stuff that you're like, yeah, it looks like someone drew that with a scriggly crayon and it was just a terrible printer with bad filament. And then you get people that know what they're doing and you're like, oh, this can print stuff that you wouldn't know was printed. That's amazing. So, yeah, that's kind of, I guess that bundles up Lowell, what I know about him.
You can't steal my pick of the week, Corey. You have to have your own.
Yeah. So who's next? Corey? You want Corey to go next, or
is it supposed to be like an item or content or what? Just
anything fish related, anything hobby related.
I'll go if Corey, you want to think about yours for a second.
Yeah.
So I feel like my pick of the week is a fish, And I think a lot of people think about African cichlids with me or brackish tanks, but my pick of the week is a fish that I think is neglected, underrepresented, but almost everyone has had one before, and that is goldfish. And for some reason, over the past few months, like I'm becoming more and more enamored with goldfish. And it's not like I'm going to create a goldfish channel or anything and go all crazy, but between
Let's
my
not
little
talk crazy.
Yeah,
listen,
goldfish.
what's that?
You don't go full goldfish.
I won't go
Yeah.
full goldfish, but between these two little guys that I have here, and then even like last week, getting inside of the 800-gallon aquarium again and catching this goldfish, like there's just something about them that, and I actually do have a bunch outside too in my pond, but they're beautiful, they're hardy, they're super useful at like eating duckweed and algae and that kind of stuff. Yeah, they can be messy. Yeah, they can eat plants, but I don't know. I've been on this goldfish thing for a while, and every time I see one, I'm like, ooh, like that would look good there. I want to do another one. And I feel like it's probably the fish that most people started off with, like, you know, going to get a fish bowl when you were 8 years old, or going to the fair and coming home with a little goldfish in a cup or whatever. But I don't know. I like them a lot. I feel like we don't talk about them much. Just not we, like us, but like just the hobby in general. They don't get a lot
They
of.
get poo-pooed. I think they're the best fish that anyone can own if it's not a fancy, if it's a single tail. So whether it's Jabunkin, Sarasa Comet, common goldfish, people say they're dirty, and yet you've probably seen me. I only use them to clean aquariums.
Yeah,
they literally clean aquariums. People are like, they're too dirty, they're pooping. It's like, it's like getting angry when your vacuum's full of stuff. I'm so angry. I have to. It collects it all, and then I have to do something about it. Like, hey, just leave it on the floor instead. Like, I do think they get a bad rap. I think half of it is just the fancy goldfish thing, because you're like, hey, I'm getting bored of single tail. Let's go fancy. And then they're just genetically so bad now. They're just like, oh, we've gotten them so small with their stomach, being in like knots almost, and just we're breeding for these crazy traits that when you do get a normal goldfish again, it's kind of amazing, because you're like, oh, you pretty much just don't get sick. You'll shrug anything off with, a metric ton of salt. I can do anything. And yeah, you're a little bit hard on plants, but for the most part, you're kind of just amazing.
Yeah, they're beautiful. You don't need heaters. Like, they're easy.
It's real hard to make a normal goldfish angry.
Right.
As in, like, oh, I'm getting sick, or I'm sad. They'll eat anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've used them to clean up after puffers and all kinds of, in turtle tanks. There's so many things where it's like the tank, the animal itself is messy, and then you bring in the goldfish and it cleans it up for you.
Yeah. So I'm about goldfish, and I wanted, because you would ask me like to call something out, and I'm like, yeah, I could talk about lots of fish, but that is a fish that so many people have touched and used and have, but there's just not a lot of conversation about it. Speaking of which, a little Aquarium Co-op plug is we do have a presentation on Saturday, and it's all about goldfish. So I'm pretty excited about it. I talked to our presenter, Josh McWilliams, yesterday, and we did a little audio video test, and I got to see his slides. I'm like, all right, this is going to be really interesting, because it goes into the history of goldfish keeping, and showing like the original carp and how dull they used to look, and kind of how they've changed over the years. But yeah, a little highlight on goldfish is my thing.
Nice. Mine. So I completely disregarded that email or message. I remember reading it, and then I was like, that'd be a good idea. And then I did all my business stuff, and then here I am today on the spot. And my brain's full of our own stuff, and I don't want to promo that. So I'm going to go with the latest thing that I bought that I think is a trick that most people don't know, that I'm going to show on camera at some point. And so I bought a bunch of hair nets. And so what I use hair nets for is whenever I'm working with moss and I want to cover something, whether it's a coconut hut or I'm going to cover these lava rocks, you put the moss on it, then you put the hair net over it and kind of bunch it up underneath and make sure there's not a lot of loose stuff, but it'll grow through that. And it makes sure you don't get that lifting off problem that you can, you try to jam some moss like in a crevice, and then it's like, oh, it came out. And so it also lets you kind of get in there and trim if you want, as long as you don't cut the net, obviously. And so I think I got like 100 nets or 100 hair nets for $6 on Amazon or whatever. And so, yeah, I think it could be done with so much more. People don't know what wabi-kusa is or how to make wabi-kusas. You can kind of do it with that also. And it's just, it's not as good for like a big piece of wood because, imagine you're throwing a net over something. You kind of want it like, I want to kind of fit the form, but we'll watch that play out horribly in video for me, probably, even though I've done it a million times. Half the time that'll happen, be like, no, it's really easy, guys. And then I go to do it and something somehow goes wrong. And it's like, yeah, this guy looks real dumb. But then if I don't show it, if I just show it like when it's done, people are like, how'd you do it? Like, well, yeah. So
it's kind of like turning your decoration into a chia pet with moss. Like you're just like taking that coconut hut and you want some Christmas moss or whatever moss on there. That's pretty cool.
I'll be doing it with like Physcidens moss and some coral moss and stuff like that. Yeah. So
that kind of fits into Randy's DIY thing from last week about some DIY. That's a really cool, cheap pennies, right, for hair nets. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say with coconut huts, it's a little bit harder because the bottom's open, and so if you just try and do it, you can get some fish that get caught up in it. But if it's a spherical rock or something,
right,
I'm sure you could do it with like a sponge filter too, where you get like moss growing around the sponge filter by doing that method or something. I've never done that though, but I'm sure you can do it.
I had actually yesterday even I was cleaning a sponge filter, and the entire sponge filter had Saswassertang, that word, growing
the
around.
Net also would fix that.
Yeah. And interestingly, it didn't. Our course, here we back to course, like that. I had not cleaned that sponge filter in probably a year, and I cleaned it and hardly like it was just like still flowing. Easy flow was still. It was great. It was just like, man, this is so easy.
I had mine was clogged up. I actually had to clean it 5 minutes before we went live because I finally had one clog enough, and you can hear it when you're with the easy flow when it starts sputtering.
Yep.
It's one of two things. Either A, somehow the collar's gotten clogged up enough, it's usually not that.
Yep.
And the test is you just take the collar off, and if it starts blazing like a power head again, like, oh man, this sponge is actually really clogged. And so 2 minutes later, good to go for like another 8 months to a year or whatever it's going to be. I like that. Yeah.
Same.
We almost need the joke T-shirt internally of like core sponge is the best sponge or something like that. Some type of play
I was thinking about that, and as I was cleaning this thing, I was like, I need to stop taking stances on anything because given a long enough timeline, I almost have to walk everything back. Mm-hmm. Like there's so many things like, well, I didn't think 12 years later with the invention of this and this and this, that this was going to be a thing. Because I started thinking about, I'm worried that, and I haven't had it happen, I'm worried that a fine sponge filter will clog so much that it cuts off the easy flow. And then I also thought, like, what if it being so fine makes it impossible for it to clog? Like, what if we find out 5 years from now it's impossible to clog an easy flow because of the fine sponge filter? And then I have to walk it back and be like, actually, I love this now. I love the fact that it's fine, and I'm going to look so dumb on camera. But I don't run very many 5+ year tests and just to see if I'm gonna have a preference. It happens naturally, right? So.
Yeah. I think with fine versus coarse, the only advantage for my use that I would see fine is not stabbing my hands with Malaysian trumpet snails when I'm cleaning. But that's more of my problem of too many Malaysian trumpet snails. But you guys are laughing, so you probably have had that happen before. Where
that's
you're like, yeah. Usually at that point, I just throw it away. I'm like, there, I'll put a new one on here.
Well, good thing we have the other product coming out, the replacement sponges.
That's right.
Got too many. You should actually weigh it. You should weigh it before you throw it out. Like I'm throwing out 1 pound of Malaysian trumpet snails and replacing it with a brand new sponge. See how many you can.
See, my brain instantly goes like, that's very interesting. What if we were to run 2 simultaneous tanks, 1 fine, 1 coarse? We have the tear weight of them already, and then see like which one collects more and holds more and that kind of stuff. Because way too much. I hate the hobby and the fact that everyone's like, they'll myself included, will defend something to our death. Meanwhile, we haven't done an ounce of like trying to prove our theory of like, I think it does better. And you're like, in my experience, it does. But the reality is, like with the fish foods, I've been learning a lot. Like, unless you weigh it, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, that looked like a lot. Turns out it was 1/10 of what I just fed over here, even though that didn't look like a lot. And so I bet you sponge filters would be very similar. Like, once you get the same density or, take the weight of each, and then you let them run for a month or something, then you were to weigh them again, you might find that like one does collect way more or less, with people thinking, oh, fine catches way more. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like, oh, I got clogged up in week 1. Stop collecting. I have no idea. But I don't see people doing those tests because 1, there's no money in it, and 2, it takes way too long.
Yeah.
You guys ready for Randy to leak his first ever item?
Let's do it.
All right.
That if somebody paused this already and went back and watched what I flashed in my hand, they would have seen it. So the first in a while.
Oh, okay.
The Pseudotropheus
Hey.
decal stickers. They're here, and they're actually in stock as of right now.
I just realized that, because I was like, yeah, he's going to leak the sticker. We've known about that for a little while. And then I was like, wait a second. You literally have it. Like, I just thought, I thought it was going to be like a printout or something.
They just came in, had a smaller quantity sent directly to us. So here is, little Pseudotropheus solosi decal sticker.
There.
So we are bringing back some the decal sticker pro. Well, not that it went away, but we haven't made a new one in quite some time, and it's I don't know, it's a fun, easy thing for me to do, to work with somebody to make a sticker for us. So kind of pick that back up. This guy's available, and I've got one more in the works right now, and we'll just have a slow, maybe steady-ish stream of new stickers in the website. So.
I've heard that before. We shotgunned like 30 in a year and then took like 4 years off.
Now, are we
got
doing?
Nermy.
Never been closer. Never been closer.
Are we doing mail only on that one?
I don't know. I mean, if you guys are really
what do you mean mail
pressed on it?
Well, because it's the blue versus.
I was thinking like mail as in shipping only, not retail stores.
That's where our
mail
brains
as in the sex mail, not male and female.
Yeah,
Corey's got PTSD when he hears the mail word or shipping.
Shipping, packages, postage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, if you guys feel strongly about it, I can fire up the little yellow girls, and
I wouldn't say I feel strongly about it, but it would, if it's a.
Does it? So, important question. Orientation, should the female point the same direction as the male, or should the female face the opposite so people can do like little kissy faces with their boy and girl Pseudotropheus solosi?
Probably same direction, so she could be swimming away and he's chasing.
Okay. Corey, what do you think? Are you
my official stance,
or same?
My official stance is don't launch the female from a business standpoint.
Sure.
It's going to be real weird on the website, like Pseudotropheus solosi male and female, 2 different listings. Otherwise, you have to do a drop-down menu. And then I wonder how many people would even know. They're just going to be like, hey, look at that yellow lab. And it's like, no, it's a female Pseudotropheus solosi, because they don't have labels on them.
Sure, but having a yellow fish, though, like, kind of cool, right?
Sure.
I think people would be into that.
We could do a vote or something.
So is Corey wasn't this one of your ideas? Aren't you the one that was like, are we doing?
Oh yeah, I have tons of ideas. Doesn't mean they're good. Yeah.
I was the one on the fence about it, and now I'm like, yeah, sure, we can do it. I can do it, no problem. And now you're like, no, bad idea.
Once you think through all the steps I got to go through, like, how are we gonna?
Right. I'm in the middle on this now. All right, Zenzo, you're for it. Corey is the one this is the tripod. Here's the co-op tripod in action. You convince Corey, and then we'll do it.
Well,
Zenzo doesn't like to go against me, though.
I don't have enough information to be passionate about going for it. Like, if it's an easy lift, and it's like, yeah, the next time we do a print run of some other sticker, we're going to add another sticker. Sure.
That part's easy.
Yeah. Well,
don't worry about getting them. Don't worry about it. Purely think of, do you want the female or not?
Yes.
How about think of this? Okay. Do you think it will sell? Do you think people want it?
Let us know down below in the comments. Would you buy a sticker?
Would you actually buy it? Because if I bring this in, you have to buy one. I'm going to hold people accountable for this.
We don't do the
because people will be like, yeah, I want all the options. It's like saying, I'd rather have 7,000 toppings for my burger, even though you're going to order the normal burger every time. You would have to actually order this. Like, would you go, I would actually order the female Pseudotrophia solosi.
So the spirit of the decal program is not necessarily to generate sales, right? The
You're
spirit
right.
of the decal program is to have fun giveaways for people, which we do, right?
Yep.
I think we say we do it at random. We don't do it at random. People
I
get
think
stuff.
Is it random?
Well, it's randomized, but I don't remember
Yep.
how we tell people. Do we pick like one every other shipping package to put a free sticker in, or do we do it in every free? I don't know what our messaging is on that. Either way, it's supposed to be something fun. So whether or not anybody actually buys it,
Good point.
Irrelevant to the spirit of the program. So.
Spirit of the program, it's like collecting cards, right? It's like, oh,
maybe a better question is in the comment then. How many people even know male and female Pseudotrophia solosi are different?
Sexual dimorphism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can go either way on it. I could probably think of cooler yellow fish if that's what we wanted.
Do we have like yellow lab / female Pseudotrophia solosi as the product listing?
Definitely not. Now we're just
you could just pick. You could just be like, hey, it's either one. It's one of these yellow African stickers.
They're not the same.
You pick. It's
no,
close enough from a distance.
Yellow lab's gonna have black on it. I would say
I can have splashes of black added to it.
See, my brain tells me we needed to do male and female on the same sticker cutout.
It's too big. Be too big.
I'm just saying.
You wanted them to be a standard uniform size.
I do want them to be a standard
or else they'd be tiny,
size.
or else it'd be like 2 small fish on the same sticker.
We should make nanofish that are like ridiculously small.
Bunch of Ember Tetras.
Like you have to use tweezers to pull it off and to put it on something.
No. I already have it in the works. It's actually a cloud of brine shrimp. Is the next?
Oh, there you go.
Is the next step.
You should, if you're joking, you should actually do that because I think that's hilarious. Like,
well,
brine shrimp would be good.
Yeah, or paramecium. Like it's there, I promise. It's just a yellow. It's just like a white like blob. Like it's there.
Slightly off white. Yeah,
I promise.
Slightly.
I promise it's there. Oh goodness. All right. Well, we're 40 minutes in. We haven't even got to the main topic. Although you kind of hit on it a little bit. So all right.
3D printing.
Yeah. So the main topic of today is, in which, again, to repeat myself, we've kind of already touched on it a little bit, but it's 3D printing in the hobby. Kind of 2 different looks at it. One is what's something really cool that you've seen that's been 3D printed that's been very helpful for your hobby experience, and another look at it too is where do we think 3D printing is going? Like what are some cool aspects of 3D printing and how it relates to the hobby? So. Yeah, I think that's my meat and potatoes discussion.
I say we start with Randy because you just did your first 3D print ever. Like how many few days ago?
I've done 3 now.
So I think it's better to get, because I think more people right now don't have a 3D printer, and so they're a Zenzo. Yeah. And then you've got Randy who has had one, had some struggles in shipping. It kind of got broken. It was my leftover one. But now has three prints under your belt, and then I can chime in on like how it's dramatically changed my life, basically. Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, I think first and foremost, and to relate it back to Warhammer. So, I think this is very relevant. Hear me out, because one of the people's first thought of when you think of 3D printing is, well, we just don't need stores anymore. We don't need companies to produce stuff. We can just 3D print everything, right? I think that's one of the initial reactions to somebody that has never 3D printed before. So when I talk about my little Warhammer plastic figures, you think, oh, I can just get a 3D printer and I'll make all my own figures. And, there's this whole universe of pay money for a file and I can download and print anything I want, all right? And I think when you actually start to 3D print, there's the initial barrier to entry of the cost of the machine. And I think quality machine for a filament printer, Corey. So basically the one that's kind of drier. The style of, so there's a resin printer that uses liquid resin.
Oh, yes.
And it uses lighting to harden the resin at micro thin layers until you get this thing in this resin. However, that resin is incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly poisonous. You have to be in a well-ventilated area. You cannot touch it with your bare skin. You must wear gloves. You must wash whatever you print with isopropyl alcohol. It's a very like sketchy thing to do, but it makes things that are incredibly high fidelity just sharp, crisp details, and they look awesome, right? And it's not just like my little miniature hobby. It's dental stuff, like dental molds. Like it spans the gamut of like what you could print with these resin printers. FDM printers, you use a spool of plastic string basically on a spool, feeds it into the printer, and it does the same idea of layer at a time. It lays down the plastic in kind of in like a hot, it melts the plastic and lays it down. And you do get good crisp details to an extent, but if you're not printing with one of the newer printers or at a slower setting or a very fine nozzle, you see a lot of layer lines. So again, in the Warhammer hobby, like you don't want your miniature to have a bunch of layer lines. When you go to paint it, it's not going to look nearly as good. So once you start getting into it, you realize that this is not for the faint of heart, and there's actually something to it. It's a bit of an art. And then you start to realize that the 3D printing is a hobby in and of itself. And it's not something, at least not right now, where it's like Star Trek, right? Whatever that machine was in Star Trek, where you're like, I want a chicken pot pie, and it poops out
That's
a chicken pot pie. No, they had it in Star Trek too. It was the little
Jetsons
freaking...
did it first.
Okay,
I don't know if they did it first, actually.
So that's sci-fi concept, right? Like 3D printers are not there yet, right? So
no, you hit the button, and then you're like, sweet. 27 hours from now, I'm going to have something that may have failed on its way there. Yeah.
So you have to learn all the intricacies of the material you're working with, the temperature to print it at. You have to make sure there's no drafts in your room. If you don't have an enclosed unit, you have to make sure that the humidity of the material is at the right temperature. So already some of the things that I'm saying are like, wow, like that's, Randy's rambled off like 7 different variables.
Yeah, you've made it way harder for people at this point. Yeah.
Right. Right. And but that's the reality of it, right? Now, your new bamboo printer, I think lowers the learning curve, makes it less.
It definitely eliminates half of those things you mentioned. Yeah.
But it's still a thing, and it still kind of is its own hobby. So it's not, what I'm getting at is that it's not necessarily a replacement for traditional companies just because you have an STL file. Like, I think for a long time, we're still going to need companies like Aquarium Co-op and, name your other company in this hobby, or name your other company in any hobby where 3D printing is kind of thing. I think it's going to remain niche for a long time. And so I don't even know how you set me up with this and the ramble that I've gone on, but I'm going to get into 3D printing. You're adding a hobby to your hobby, right? Yes. When you could have just said, you know what, Games Workshop, here's $40 for that box of minis. You mean I don't have to mess with anything? I don't have to worry about fumes. I don't have to worry about humidity of printing or any of that stuff. I can just give you $40 instead of buying $1,000 machine with $30 worth of filament and then wait and have failed prints and do all this nonsense and then have to clean my mini anyway because of all the layer lines or the support marks. So I think it's great if you're interested, if you're like mechanically inclined, or it seems like a cool thing that you want to get into as its own hobby, which I kind of did, then by all means jump into it. It's fun. But if you're like a casual observer and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this to save money, no. That is not what it is. Thoughts, Corey? Thoughts, Zenzo?
I think Zenzo goes next. Yeah. And I thought of a cool thing of, what if we come up with an item and I hit the print button and then we can get it done before the end of the thing and be like, we came up with a thing. Obviously, it can't be too big. It's gonna be this giant thing. It's like, well, it takes a day. We're not gonna stay on here for a day, but we can find something quick.
Yeah.
So I'll look at some models and I'll try to find something aquarium related that I could just hit print right now, and it's hopefully one piece and
something small that prints in 20 minutes.
Yeah. So you talk. I'll see if I can find something like that.
So prior to this year, I had zero experience. I mean, obviously I knew about 3D printing, but I've never like handled anything that like someone I knew 3D printed or saw anything in the hobby that was 3D printed that I was touching. And then spending a lot of time up at Corey's the last few months, my mind has been blown. Like, I cannot wait for the time that I can set up a 3D printer, despite all the learning curve and everything like that. The ability to print things on the fly that are useful on a daily basis is, I think, just unlocks a whole new realm. Now, yes, so like, here's something that Corey had sitting in a box that I took home because he didn't need it. I'm like, oh, what is this? right? And it looks like, oh, is that like something that goes on a wall for like a plate or blocking plate? It's actually for aquarium lids. So like how I use the twin wall lids on some of my aquariums, the basically greenhouse panels.
Mm-hmm.
So all I did is I traced the thing, cut a hole in it. This drops right in, and it's a feeding door.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
so it's so like it's just on one tank. This one thing has just made that part of my fish keeping so much easier. And
Have you how would you, because what I did is I just drilled like a 2-inch hole in one of my greenhouse lids, or in a lot of them, and that was my feeding port. And so for like over time, because the twin walls, right, you have like those hollow channels.
Yeah.
Like extreme krill flake would just build up in there, and so every once in a while I'd have to take it out and hose it out to get all of like the the soggy krill flake that would get stuck. So that little door right there, that is legit. And if I use those lids again, I would absolutely print that out and run those.
And imagine you could, I'm sure you could make them different size. You could probably make one that works with our auto feeder. I was just lifting up the lid. So then it's like, all right, I've got the food. I got to lift up the lid and then figure out how to hold the lid while I, drop in the sprinkles of food. But now I can just take this off, set it down, sprinkle in the hole, close it up. And it's such a silly thing, but it's so cool. But my take is there's so many applications. There's things that we haven't even thought of, hobby related or not related, that I think 3D printers can be useful for. Another example is last week we were boxing up some camera equipment and we realized that we needed some lens caps for the body of the camera body and the lens cap for the actual lens. And we were missing 2 of each. And Corey's like, yeah, I think we could 3D print them. You can even put like the Sony logo on them and everything. 38 minutes later or whatever it was, it's like, yep, here's 2 lens caps. Oh, these fit perfectly. Great. And so, just walking around the house or just in your day-to-day activities or in your office or whatever, like, I'm sure there's something that you could optimize, like cord management or a little thing for your keyboard to reposition it or whatever it is. I think
this thing right here. This is a very weird shaped shelf, right? That fits specifically under the Apple Studio monitor. So if you look at it, it's got this weird tilt and everything. This has that tilt built in, and so it's holding an extra cell phone I use to film underwater. And so
why haven't you shared that with me yet?
Because you just were able to print like a minute and a half ago.
So you should be like, you should have a playlist for me. You're like, Randy, here's your top 10 prints that you
here's the hits. Out. Yeah.
Yes. I'm looking. I just moved my monitor. There it is right there. I could put that little sucker right there, extra drawer. That would be like having a front pocket, but for my monitor.
Yep.
Yeah. But I just imagine like, some 3D printed algae scraper for the glass or something that fits your fingers or something like that. And so many things that you wouldn't think of. It's like, oh, like if I had like a hard edge on my finger where I could get up to the silicone or whatever. So I'm sure, as more and more people start using 3D printers and they're more prevalent, like more and more things will come to light that are just ingenious and,
well, you get I'll take it from Zenzo here. Yeah. You get like, so that thing that he showed where it's the cutout for a feeder, right? Or for feeding. Well, now the person that actually designed that has made it where it actually will hold like our feeder. And so it's like a perfect fit for that. And so there's always these evolutions of things that start going on. I grabbed a random aquarium product. We're gonna have to go a little bit longer on this episode. It goes like, it won't be done for 45 minutes.
Oh no.
The aquarium hose. That doesn't prove how fast it can be done. How do they know that it didn't fail, right?
Or you could have just you didn't even have to tell us what you're printing. You could have already had something printed and be like,
I could have.
Oh, it's done. It beeped. Yeah. Here it is.
No, it's something I've never printed. It's a aquarium hose flow diffuser. So in theory, you'd put it on the end of the hose when you're refilling, and it wouldn't make it so that it like digs up your gravel and stuff. So, and all I had to do was I just Googled aquarium stuff and started looking. I'm like, I want to print this thing, and then you'll have 50% of the time you're like, that's not really that good or applicable to what I'm trying to do. And then you're like, wait, this thing's amazing, but it would be better. Let me see if someone's made it better. So I would say Randy took it into resin printing, and that just scared everybody off because even I've never done that, and no real person's ever going to do that. You start getting into all these crazy materials where
not in this hobby, not in
my appeal is I want it to be as simple as printing a document, right? So you're like, oh yeah, everyone owns a printer. You could just print a document.
Yep.
That's what I want. I want to go, hey, here's a file. You can go ahead and print this. And it's fairly easy if you buy some of that, like the Bamboo Labs higher end one, and you buy a filament dryer. If you get those two pieces, you're already 75% of the way there of like, I click print and it just works. Then there's a little bit of learning, like, well, what filament to buy. There's a few other little steps, but I'm at a point now, and it took me about 6 weeks to get there because I didn't have the Corey recommending just buy this printer and this filament dryer. Instead, people are like, well, here's what I do and all these crazy things. But now that I got to that point, I basically just click print. And then I remember 2 hours later, like, oh yeah, shouldn't I have a thing? And then I go over there, my thing's made. And that I think is what people want to do is they want to hop like on our forum and go, hey, there's a file. And I could just print that, whether it's risers for the lights, whether it's different auto feeder attachments, whether it's, a bulkhead tightener, whether it's a strainer we've made, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's 99% of what people are going to do is like someone modeled a thing, they made it for us, and we can all print it. And then there's the people that will like, oh, I'm going to make my own thing, which I've only made one thing and I didn't even refine it, but to prove they're like, okay, that's how I would do it. And now I'm mostly just working with people that are like, they've basically full-time 3D model at their own jobs. And then I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a thing. And they're like, sweet, I'll have it to you in 11 minutes. And that would have taken me 2 days because they're just, if you've ever seen people in Excel or Photoshop where it's just, and stuff's just going, that's how they are. And I'm like, I gotta have to watch the video on how to make that part happen. I don't know how to put that curve like I want it. And so I haven't gotten deep into that, but the ability to just print things like we've been kind of saying, and you don't know what you need yet, because you might go like, yeah, but I don't need anything. Like, true, you don't until you realize what you could do, though, is the first step.
So
the thing I think I explained it to Zenzo, I think anything that's like under $10 on Amazon, there's probably a 60% chance you could hit the print button and have found the file of something that would fill the role for free. And that's really powerful, I think, because it's like with the caps and things, it was a time thing. Like we could have ordered caps and be like, okay, we spent $18, we got 4 caps, but that would have taken 2 or 3 days to get. And that would have delayed what we were doing. Instead, it was in under 2 hours. We printed both sets of caps and we still mailed them the same day. So
question for you, Corey, thinking about a plug and play, like someone at home, moderately tech savvy, they can connect a printer to their computer and print from their phone. What would they need to spend to get a decent, usable 3D printing setup that will do what you just described? Like,
so I think there's a big difference between what's the minimum you could spend to do it.
Sure. Yeah,
and
we don't want
the
that.
learning curve that comes with it.
Right.
And I'm only interested I'm going to call myself a working professional. I need plug and play. And so I believe what Randy has, which was the Prusa printer I bought a couple years ago, was kind of plug and play, but there's still like, gotta kind of, you have to use an SD card. You have to put the file on it. You have to walk over and put it in the printer. I hated that. Where like this Bamboo Lab one, I can start a print from my phone, or I can just look for prints on my phone.
Sure.
And actually right now I have, we can see if it ever does anything, if it comes back over. Right now it's calibrating to start printing.
Okay.
But I have a live feed always. So I can see like, is it going okay? I can leave the house. I can do whatever I want. It also creates time lapses, which is awesome. So that's a setup I recommend. And there will be people, I do think it's Apple versus Android people. There's people like, you could do that for half what Corey said. It's all about how much is your time worth and how much do you want to spend learning the hobby versus I just want it to work. And so I'm only going to recommend that I just want it to work.
Yeah.
I think that costs $1,500 between the printer, the filament dryer, and filaments to get you started in that little bit of learning curve. And
Mhm.
it's, why is it $1,500? Corey, that's so expensive. Like, let's realize that everything went up by 20% like last week, basically.
Right,
So
right.
it would have been like, hey, you can get in for like $1,250 or something.
Right.
And this will get you to where it's already enclosed. You don't have to worry about what temperature is my room, and you get the camera action, and you get all these little features, and that's the one that I would recommend to family.
So that's what I'm battling right now. That's my next. So first off was first layer print height, or print height in general on your Z axis. So there's a certain amount of squish, they call it, that if it's too high up, it's gonna lay it down like a tube, and it's not going to adhere to the actual plate. But if you go too low, and we're talking like fractions of a millimeter of what you're trying to adjust and what you're trying to shoot for, and it's all highly subjective. Like, you're the one looking at it, and you're trying to make these changes on the fly during the calibration program. Too low, and you're just going to like blow it all out, and it's just going to be
you can also scrape the plate and all that kind of stuff if you really went haywire.
And so I've got that figured out. And now the next thing to figure out is the enclosure. So the unit that I have it's not an enclosed unit. And so what that means is it's a little bit louder, sure, but the big thing is that the temperature. So the bed heats up, it's extruded at a temperature, but then you want the ambient temperature also. You want to eliminate drafts, and you want to keep it kind of as warm as possible, right? Like, if my room is 67 degrees or 70, let's say I'm up to 70 degrees, like, I think 70 is like the bare minimum ambient room temperature that you want it at. But if you stick it in an enclosure, all the heat that the plate and the nozzle are generating, that's going to get captured in that enclosure. So right
like
now,
putting a lid on an aquarium.
Yeah, kind of like putting a lid on an aquarium. Exactly. So if you went this route, right? Granted, Corey gave it to me, so that I'm in nothing for it other than a couple of replacement parts. But if you went this cheaper route to begin with, you then have to figure out, okay, what is my solution to get an enclosure? Are you going to build one yourself? Are you going to build one and have plexiglass sides so you can see what's going on? Are you going to do the like double IKEA end table hack, where you basically print out these brackets and you stack two IKEA end tables on top of each other, plexiglass it, and it ends up looking like a pretty clean, like, little piece of furniture that was purpose built, but it's an IKEA hack. Whereas again, Corey,
get a 40 breeder, put a 40 breeder on top.
yeah, or like the biggest Home Depot like freaking tub,
thing.
right? Yeah. So that's another option for you. Maybe cut it out and put a plexiglass window in or something. But to Corey's point, like, spending a little bit more money up front, you then avoid the DIY hacking to figure out how do you solve now for ambient room temperature. One thing I want to kind of go back to and circle on is to say, so again, if somebody wasn't approaching this as a hobby, which I think that would be the better way to approach this, and they said, I wanted to support my fish room, or my fish hobby, how many tanks would somebody need to have to truly justify this $1,500 investment for their
I think
hobby?
you'd have to have a fish room.
Right.
I think you'd have to have a fish room. But if you were, if you were like, so for instance, one other project we want to do is I want to hang all the tools in my garage. Well, I can print all these hangers and everything with the thing. So if you've got other things you can use it for, which you can't really conceptualize what you're actually going to use it for yet, but
that's where I could see a Zenzo. I could see a Zenzo really like just looking around everywhere. Like, I can print something for this. I can print something for that.
That's what I do when I'm bored. Yeah.
Every motorcycle part, like, yes.
And especially if you have other hobbies like me, I'm going to print Warhammer terrain with the same 3D printer that I'm going to print fish stuff on. Right. And you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's huge with this hobby. Like, if you go to Thingiverse, or if you look on the forum, like, all these little gadgets and things that people have made, you don't know that you need that until you see it, right? So you have no idea that you need this thing until you see it. And granted, it may not be a need, or utilize, I should say. You don't know what you can utilize until you see what's available out there. And I think the forum so far is a pretty good, to shout out to the Coop forum. It's the 3D printing part of our forum is the third, what do you call that? The third category, the third general, the third chat is aquarium DIY and 3D printing. Yeah. Like, that's high. You've got general chat, plants, algae fertilizers, and then 3D printing. Like, that's pretty, it's above fish breeding. Like, that's pretty important, or that's pretty impressive.
High up there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
one-
think
one-
that
Granted, Corey
on that
arranged
note-
it, but
yeah, I wasted a lot of money by not having. Here's what you need to do. People kept telling me, "Here's what you could do. Here's what you could do," instead of just going, "Just do this." So like, I needed buy this gravel, buy this fertilizer, buy this plant, buy this light. It will work.
Mhm.
And people kept going, "Well, any light, any fertilizer, any gravel," and you're like, "Yeah, but I don't know what's wrong with the plant." And so I kept having to buy different plates and different filaments and different things because it wasn't working right, and I didn't know. So it was kind of like in an aquarium where you're like, well, my fish aren't healthy, so I bought a different medicine. And then that didn't work. So I bought a different medicine. And that didn't work. So I bought a different medicine. And pretty soon you spent a ton of money where if someone could have told you use XYZ, it would do it. And that's what actually happened is I have like 2 totes filled with extra stuff
Mhm.
that is not being used because I kept trying to solve the adhesion problem of like, oh, it's not really, and it turns out that I was using kind of poor quality filament and I wasn't drying it, and that was a problem. Meanwhile, I bought different plates and I upgraded the lighting and I did this and I did that. And really, I would have saved probably $1,000, well, not that, like $500 if I had just known buy this printer and buy this filament dryer and buy this filament. You've now ruled everything out. Now hit print. And then Randy was more talking about refining, like, this isn't as smooth as I would like it. You can then play with some settings from that. But there's a big gap between hit print and I made a bowl of spaghetti and that didn't go so well versus, hey, I made the thing. I wish it was a little bit cleaner or a little bit of this a little bit better.
no, I had to
That's
solve.
some
I had to
tweaking.
solve for the squish in order to actually get it, that first layer to even stick. All of my failures were because that first layer wouldn't stick.
Yeah,
And
it's like the bamboo
actually,
layer.
It actually could have been a little colder too in the house as well. So because I tried it like in the dead of winter.
It's like brine
and
shrimp,
I
actually.
recently picked it back
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Like brine shrimp, ambient temperatures matter, but like the Bamboo Labs, I watched it. It printed the first layer, and then it also used the LiDAR to examine it before it kept going. So it'll alert me of like, hey, I don't like this first layer. Do you want me to keep going? It's only done that when I had bad filament or something like that, but now it's just locked in, and now I can just print anything. And so,
the filament that you sent me with the printer, is that the bad filament or is that? What did you send me?
No, that's so
Sabotage.
no, but you do have to dry it. Like you do have to dry
Yeah.
it. Like that's always a thing, especially in fish rooms because we're so much extra humidity around where you're doing it. Yeah, I tried different like the harder like different filaments have different properties and like this one's better, but it would stick to the plate so much I couldn't get it off. Like I was scratching the plate to get them to release. And so I just go with I just go with PLA Plus, which is like the cheapest one. And it is, enough to run our business on it basically. And all the parts I use in aquariums and everything, I have no problem. That being said, I'm not like replacing a car part with it or something. You can get to, I need to just withstand the sun or I need to withstand this or that. That's when you start getting into some of these specialized things. But I think for the most part, it's like a printer. We all have a printer, but you're like, well, this one could technically load feed and mail merge and print addresses on envelopes. And you're like, yeah, but that takes so much setup and all this. Instead, we're just printing basic documents. And that's what I think people actually want from 3D printers instead of what I call the ultra nerds going, yes, you technically could print all the parts. Like there are kits you can buy where you have to print on another 3D printer. So you have to have a buddy or something, all the parts to go with the metal parts to build your own 3D printer. And some people advocate for that. Like you'll know exactly how it works. And to me, that's like saying you can buy a car off the lot, or we'll sell it to you in a box and you can put it together. When you're done putting that car together, you know exactly how it works. And not only is that a lot of time, things can go wrong. And if you don't get it right, you end up spending way more money. And that was my problem. I ended up spending way more money because I couldn't get it right, because I didn't understand, what is the difference between the plant being healthy and not healthy and missing fertilizer or too much fertilizer or algae. I didn't understand any of that yet. And I think a lot of people, this is what I feel like I'm good at in business, is remembering back to when I didn't know anything. I just need to make it easy. I need the easy printer, 3D printer, and that's what Bamboo Labs has been. I have no allegiance to any of them other than I've tried 2 different ones, and I started with going, what are the best ones that I could find? Those were the top 2. There are other ones out there, and I've got friends that have them, and they're like, yeah, I hate this thing. And I'm like, yeah, I know if you just had a better printer, you would love 3D printing. But they go, yeah, I click print, and then 7 out of 10 times it fails. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds horrible. Like, you need 9.5 out of 10 flawless prints always. You need that. Because when I was doing it, Zenzo would see it like, yeah, I click the button and I do nothing else, and like, yeah, it's done, it's good.
Hold on, we're missing an opportunity. Bamboo Labs should sponsor the freaking Deep in the Mulm. They should send us some 3D printers.
They do sponsor some 3D printers and stuff.
They sponsor a lot of, again, my nerd side, my other nerd
you
hobby.
Should take that on, Randy. I feel like creators. You're good at corporate speaking people of like, do you understand the reach and the blah blah blah? Like, this guy's already shouting you out lots. Like, just get us one of the new printers when they come out.
Yeah.
Like, I'll keep singing their praise. I'm going to buy one either way. So, like, well, I guess I don't know what features it has, but if it adds anything that makes my life even easier, I'm buying it, because the value we get from a business is through the roof. The fact that I can cut months off of production and testing and prototyping and all that.
I mean, this has been brought up, 3 years ago? You and I talked about it. Might even have been in the hotel in China. Like, man,
your printer sat almost 2 years without me ever opening it.
One of us needs to get into 3D printing, because this is going to cut down and just make things a lot easier, especially.
We had the goal. I remember the conversation. Yes. The goal was, once the expansion opens, once the warehouse move is done, we should have the bandwidth that I could take classes or something and really learn 3D printing. Well, expansion's still not open. The move is done, but it was Lowell that convinced me to start it up and actually open the box. And from that point, I will admit, it was very, very frustrating. I'm just like, this is horrible. But then I post about how it's horrible, and then they go, try this. And it got me to where I could 3D print something, and that was pretty cool. And I saw the potential, and now, I'm into it for 3 or 4 months or whatever, maybe 6 months. I don't even know the timeline at this point, but now I understand how it is the smartphone. I tell people this, like, it's the same technological jump from going from just a flip phone to an actual smartphone. Like, the amount of stuff I can do, and if you don't own one, you don't know what you're missing. So you're just like, yeah, I don't know. Because and 10 years ago, I would also say no one needed that 3D printer. They sucked. Like, you could make things, you're like, look, I made this thing that no one actually needs. And now you could 3D print stuff. You're like, wow, that actually saved you money and time. And or you can always build things you couldn't normally get, but the quality is so much better than what I see. Because even when you look online, you're like, if you Google files to 3D print, you'll see some that are like, oh, it's from 2014, and they look terrible. Like, the print quality is terrible. And if you were to print that same file on a printer from the last year, you'd be like, wow, this looks amazing. Why would they ever show that picture? It's like, because they're not being paid. It was some hobbyist 10 years ago that did that. That's why. And they DIY'd their own printer type of deal. Yeah.
Do you want to know what I've printed so far?
Yeah.
2 of those little pugs that came on the SD card, one for each boy, and then the third is chubby iguana.
And what is chubby iguana? Is that one of the ones that can like move? And
No. So, and the reason why I've only printed these 3 things is, again, going back to like ambient room temperature, if it being too cold and the first layer not sticking. So what I've tried printing things that have a wider base, when the print head is over here, it's allowing too much temperature difference over here. So that first layer starts to lift. And this printer, when it goes back, it doesn't have that smart, LiDAR tech to say, oh, something's wrong. It'll just keep going. So, I mean, either way, whether it has a LiDAR or not, if it's going to fail, it's going to fail. So I think naturally it's getting warmer, so it'll be easier to do without me solving the enclosure problem. But I'll probably figure some hokey solution out for the enclosure problem, so I can actually print things that are a bit more larger, wider, and I don't have to worry about the temperature problem as much. So
you got to reach out to Bamboo Labs.
Yay!
There you go.
Yep. We need 2 printers, one for you, one for Corey, of their latest and greatest.
Tell them you're having so much problems with their competitor one, and like, oh, my boss got yours. He loves it.
And then Corey's gonna want the new one, so Corey won't want the old one. Then I'll take the old one. Perfect.
Uh-oh,
we lost Corey.
Where'd he go?
He didn't like the fact that I'm taking his 3D printer.
No, I would be curious to know. Like, I feel like seeing what you would 3D print, Zenzo. Like, not even fish related. I'm so curious to see what are the gadget things that you're gonna print out for your garage. What are all the? I almost picture you like you're just bedazzled with like these 3D printed things. You're like, dude, look at this. Look at this. I got a holder for my Leatherman. I got a this for this. I got a clip for the Harley for the helmet. Like all these things that like you're just gonna go crazy over. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, pretty much.
Double Corey?
Yeah, I don't know. My internet like went out. Something happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
I'd probably start with the toolbox.
Right.
I'd probably start with like toolbox organization. I already have like those, the toolbox widgets. It's actually like the name. It's what they're called. They're called toolbox widgets, and they. I can go grab one, but they're basically like these little things that you can magnetically connect together, and you can line up. I like my tools to be very organized, as Randy and Corey have seen in pictures and stuff. Like all the wrenches lined up, all my screwdrivers lined up, and I'd probably just start printing a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then I would move on to like, okay, well, I'd probably print like a dozen of these because I want them everywhere. I'd like Corey. I'd be printing every day. I would like, okay, what can I print today? I'd probably have a list of things that I want to print, and then like, okay,
3D print your wife's birthday present, honey. Look what I made you. Look what I made you.
Well, I did make Katie something because that's a good point. She was, I'm all hopped up on the 3D printer. Like, do you see how cool this is? Like, look how cool. She's like, and she totally was not on board. And this is a common story I've seen around the internet. And the minute you can make something where they're complaining, so my wife was complaining about her soup spoon rests. So you're cooking, you set it down, right? And she's like, this thing wants to flop off. This one doesn't hold this type of spoon right. And I was like, oh, yeah? And so I Googled it, and there's like 1,000 different soup spoon rest type of models. And I'm like, what exactly do you not like about the one that you have? And so after listening to her complaints, 45 minutes later, I have one that she loves it, and she's like, this thing's amazing. What else can we print? And so now she was trying to get me to like 3D model and print something crazy. And I was like, okay, this is going to take 2 days of my life to invent. And we could just buy this thing. Like, this is not the use for this. Like, if we needed 1,000 of them, sure. So now she kind of corrected too hard of like, you can just build anything now, right? Like, there's still a time and a place to what you're going to build. And I should say there's one thing that we haven't talked about, size limitation. You can only build something like maybe this big. Right. And so as one part. And so a great example, Bamboo Lab has a fairly large print surface. It's bigger than the one Randy has. So when I went to print Lowell's fry raising thing, I actually had to get into the slicer and make it smaller and chop a piece out because it was too big for that bed. And so that would be something that I definitely would want. Like, a bigger bed came out with Bamboo Labs, I'm instantly buying it. But also those smaller, cheaper printers have much smaller things. And then you start running into like, I can't make the thing the way I want it to because like stuff that's got to hold water. It's got to be in one piece. A lot of things you can be like, just keep screwing it together. Like, well, that's not watertight. Right. For our hobby, you do kind of like if you're going to print that catch cup, you could make the catch cup behind Randy. You could make it in just like, it's in a white plastic or whatever. But you have to print it in one piece. Otherwise, it would not hold water. Right. And so that is a big portion of it is print bed size. And especially like I really ran into it making railings for the slide tops I was doing.
Those are cool.
And so, they're super cool, practical.
But multiple pieces, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so like one of the prints I have to do, I'm printing all new handles for the lids at the store. So I need to print like 50 lids or 50 handles and then double-sided tape. Yes, you can buy them for $2 or $3 a piece on Amazon, but why not? So they also say Aquarium and all that, where I could have them say Aquarium Co-op if we wanted, and they'll be in black or gray.
How many per plate are you going to make? Because I think that's the other thing too, is that you can have multiple things printing on the same plate.
I'll probably be able to fit I'll probably do 2 runs of like 25, but I could probably fit I could fit 32 of them on here or something like that. And it's a little bit weird because I run if you print just one, it'll print almost perfect. You start printing like 60, and you'll get some of those like it started to cool and that, and so it's like it'll still be fully functional, but it's not as good. It would be like me saying, hey, you need to clean an aquarium today, Zenzo. And you're like, you got 8 hours. It'll be clean as a whistle. If I say you got to clean 50 aquariums in 8 hours, each one is like, well, you can only do so well in the same amount of time. So, yeah, that is a limitation. But, yeah, big print bed. And there's some commercial ones that can do like the size of a car or something. I'm like, man, I don't know what I'd be printing, but I can only imagine. You're like, yeah, I printed a bed frame today or something. It's something massive and crazy. Yeah.
What print model does Lowell use for that bigger bed?
I think he's using the. I honestly I don't know, because I asked him what should I buy once I was having problems with mine. He recommended the one I have,
right?
But he probably has one of several different ones, because that's what usually happens with guys that have multiple printers. Is like, okay, I've got that one that does really well. I want to scale this. He might have 6 printers going. He's like, I could save $300 per if they don't have the housing, and maybe you're setting up the whole room to be the right temperature now. And so there's some of these, usually, and that'll lead you astray when you're like, well, this guy's got 30 printers going. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. And you'll go and buy the one that Randy has. And it's like, yes, if you have 30 printers and you know exactly how it works and you're setting up a farm, Randy's printer, the Prusa, makes total sense. And if you're just like, but it's my first aquarium, like, that's an entirely different thing than someone who owns a fish room, right? Like, they're just different skill sets, set them up for success early. And yeah, so that's...
It's like heating the room and using central air for 25 tanks versus like, oh, I need a heater, I need an air pump, I need all the things.
They dry the whole room, so they don't run filament dryers on
Right.
each one, for instance, because it's like the economy of scale, right? And so the other thing that I did that I would make this product if I was going to make a product, but you can get rolls. They sell them by weight, right? And so they're like by kilo. So you can get 1 kilo, you can get 3 kilo, you can get up to 5 kilo rolls. And there's almost no filament dryers for 5 kilo rolls. There's one. I haven't even put it together yet. It took forever to get here. And so I've been doing 3 kilogram rolls, because when you run out of the stuff that prints, it just stops. So imagine I'm printing 50 handles and they're all 2/3 done. It just stops. And if I don't feed it in soon enough, it's all cooled down, and you'll see the line where it picked back up. Sometimes it'll just fail. And so if I have the option to have that happen 1/5 as often, because I've got 5 kilos lined up as opposed to 1 kilo, I'll take that option every day. Plus, it's a little more efficient. You buy 5 kilos at a time, a little bit cheaper than buying 1 kilo at a time. And like there was, I don't know if he's still following, because I saw he's selling his fish room, but Alexander Engelhart, I think he 3D printed like a whole Iron Man costume for his wife at Comic-Con. And so when you start doing some of those big helmets and things that people do, like they might be 2 or 3 kilograms of filament. And so you would much rather have a bigger spool feeding it. So,
Yeah, the cosplaying aspect of the 3D printing.
Yeah. I'm only into functional prints and work. There's so many people that do buy and they're like, yeah, I print Mass and Charizards and a Marvel bust to sit on my...
He says that, but like right now he has another print farm going that's like printing out his own like Hulkbuster Iron Man suit that he'll never tell, but he goes undercover to like Comic-Con.
That's right.
And it always has to be something with a mask.
Of course. Who was talking about that? I used to do that a lot, like Adam Savage and stuff from Mythbusters.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, he's a big cosplay, but if you put the mask on, you get to be a normal person instead of having to be the celebrity. You can go and you can always flip the mask up and now you're a celebrity, but you can then put the mask kind of back on and go and enjoy whatever you're doing again. And so, yeah, I think that's I almost went to an Aquashella that was that way, because you could dress up, right? And I was like, oh, it is super fun for me to go and just
Halloween.
Be the hobbyist.
It was a Halloween one in Dallas.
It was a Halloween one, and if I could just be the hobbyist, because I can't go to a vendor booth and have them not be like, so what's it going to take for you to start selling our crap? Like, well, first I'd like to just look at your product if I could.
Yeah.
And so if I could go incognito, that'd be fun. Yeah. All right. What are we talking about next? Because people are bored of 3D printers. So now now that we bored them out, anyone that stayed, we got to give them something real juicy,
Well, how
I was
are we
just-
doing on your 3D printing timer?
Yeah.
16 minutes. 16 minutes on my 3D print.
All
So
right.
is that what we're doing? We got to make 16 minutes happen.
Yes. I feel like
All
this
right.
has to be to show, like, hopefully it still looks like it's going just fine. I can show you guys right here. It's still, it's printing away.
Yep.
There
64%.
we go. Yeah.
Oh, we can
So-
actually see it on camera.
It's actually
next time we'll have to come up with a topic at the very beginning, and then we'll say, okay, go print one of those, and then
3D
yeah.
printer challenge.
3D printer challenge. You mentioned Adam Savage from Mythbusters. I actually saw him a few months ago at the airport, and TSA was giving him a hard time right in front of me. And I forgot what he and I talked for like 30 seconds, and I forgot, but I remember he was doing something. I want to say like it was something with fish tanks or something. I should have said like, hey, like if you ever, because he's here in San Francisco, like, hey, if you ever need anything with,
You got to fire Zenzo. He had the perfect opportunity, and he just
yeah,
he was talking about how he wanted to do a bunch of stuff with fish tanks, and I was just so starstruck. I didn't tell him that I represent Aquarium Co-op, and
I also rode on an airplane with Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. That was another one. Yeah. So
hopefully it wasn't after he got done filming like a septic episode or something.
No, we were he was sitting up front with me, and we were just going. I think we are going to Texas or something, but yeah, it was not dirty. He was.
Were you actually sitting next to him, or he was just up there?
We were both in first class, and it was a small plane, so it was like 2 seats across. So yeah.
All right.
Zenzo
All right,
he just swooped on the seat next to him and told the guy that actually had the ticket.
Hey,
like,
get out of here!
Get out of here.
I
I
want
got
to pitch an idea. So
I do have travel coming up. I'm going to see Dan's Fish in May. I'm going to
That's
film
right.
and do all that, and then I've got April's Aquarium on the 3rd of April.
3rd of April.
Is it the 3rd? It might be. I got to look.
4th April. It's the first weekend of
4th.
April. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then we also have
What
Corey?
Expansion?
Have they promoted that yet? Does their Facebook page, have they put anything else out about?
No, I sent him an email today going, hey, are you going to do that? Because we want to help promote it so that people know if they want to come meet me. But yeah, Expansion for the store.
That's surprising.
May 3rd.
We're slated for May 3rd. We don't have any actual materials to promote that yet. Like, I'm trying to think of some stuff I want to put maybe on sale or something, like a little more than just like, hey, I'll be there.
Yeah, so we're working
on
on
a sale for the whole weekend.
Yep, I've got the graphics spun up so we can get those done soon and start promoting that. And
which I've got the contractor back in there next week. People are like, I thought you're open. Like, well, now we get to start the process of making the transition between the two work. So there's stuff we have to do in the, like, by tearing tanks down in the store because there's piping on the way. We want to replace it with like wooden rock displays and all that. So like, even though we've got the green light, like, and straight to phase 2 of this. And so it's still getting better and better and better. Yeah.
So that is actually something that we haven't told the audience yet, right? That we've got did you mention that in the live stream?
The what?
That we got the final approval?
Yeah, I did mention that we've gotten final approval and that we're slating it for that May 3rd, but there could be something that hops in the way that we just can't anticipate. So we're obviously going to try, like, you're flying up a couple of times. We're really dedicating to make sure that we don't miss this deadline, but there could be something that is unforeseen that, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Right.
But we put in everything we can in between now and then to prevent that from actually holding us up.
Yeah, barring
it's a pretty safe bet of, like, if you were going to buy plane tickets or you were going to drive, like, I got to say there's like a 90% chance we're going to make that weekend. There's still 10%, like, who knew that the city was going to do a thing that they had no business doing or something. So
sure.
Yeah.
We received the Zis is back in stock. So we got that received today.
Heck yeah.
All right.
So that means we were sold out of the egg tumblers, I think. Is that right?
Tumblers, I believe breeder box too.
Okay, so those are both back.
Yeah, and I think we were probably getting low on the hatchers, just as that's how our inventory ordering works.
Let's bring a little business part, because I like this part too. What's the latest that you know roughly on when's the next container that's going to bring product? So I know every day I get asked when brine shrimp, and then also we know we've got like the 1 pounders of food coming in. What's the we're officially going to tell people 22 years from now, so that way we can't disappoint them. And then also like, man, if everything lined up and the ports were backed up like they are right now, we'd be seeing it in 4 weeks or 3 weeks or what's that? You got any intel on that, knowing that you have to write those emails and do that stuff frequently?
So the container with the brine shrimp is going to hit Los Angeles on the 28th of this month.
Cool.
And then is it the
Okay.
28th or is it the 23rd? Hold on. Waiting.
Because I've been telling people like 8 weeks plus still, because it could still. This got held up for 4 weeks in LA, just sat there doing nothing.
I like telling, I think if we told people June, that'd be, under.
That'd be safe.
I think the members are a little more like, hey, don't harass customer service. This is a best case versus a worst case likely scenario.
Hold on, give me 2 seconds. I'll find it.
So I think
because people are acting like, have you even ordered it yet? Like, yes, they took our money like in December. Like, this has been a long beating.
And now exactly what we talked about though of why we were so cautious and why we wanted to make sure we had our financial ducks in a row. Tariff concerns. Well, guess what, folks? Tariffs hit this container, and they're 45% tariff. So
lost an extra $60,000 on that. And so the fear is, because for context, we bought about $300,000 worth of stuff. And then when you put a 45% tariff on that, like, oh, that's $150K basically. So now Aquarium Co-op, whatever you want to call it, we have to shell out $450,000. It's almost $500,000. The problem is, between now and the 28th, what if it's another 20%? Like, oh, just kidding. You just lost another 60 grand, Corey. Like, well, now. And so we didn't want to place $500,000 worth of orders and then have tariffs go up a bunch and then literally be like, Corey doesn't have the $1 million. We're filing bankruptcy. And so we had to play conservative here. And so that led to, we've got some outages, but we will be set up better. Although if everybody just buys all our brine shrimp because it was like a scarcity thing, we're going to have to place an order like the same day. Like a week later, just kidding, we'll take another $100,000 in brine shrimp. Oh.
Yeah. So I feel like the only date to confidently, well, not even confidently, but to say would be that the ship is scheduled to be in Long Beach on March 26th. Now, from there, it has to get unloaded, right? And then even though it's unloaded,
and that can take a week sometimes.
Right. So we're looking at the soonest, maybe a week to get off the ship onto a rail on its way to Chicago. So the actual rail ride could take 4 days to a week, I think. So I think like mid to late April is still a reasonable time frame of when we're going to have our stuff back in stock. And, if it's more likely going to be mid, I would still rather say mid to late so I can sandbag a little bit.
So that's brine shrimp. Is that also the 1 pound food things?
No, that one's not 1 pound food. 1 pound food is going to leave pretty soon. So 1 pound food is going to be late April at the earliest. So that one's more likely going to be a May one.
So I'm going to tell people right now, we're probably going to run out of Magic Small Fish Feed, like for a few weeks. So if you're like, oh man, I'm raising fish and depending on this, like you should buy some extra right now. No, even though that when the 1 pounders land is going to be a slightly better deal, but it's been a hard game to play and we're threading the needle as best we can. And we actually, we'll have enough community pellet because it's selling slower. I did not expect the response of the Magic Small Fish Feed to be this good.
Well, and
we thought we were good.
Well, the other thing too is that container probably should have been here by now, but it's the production of it. The Magic Small Fish Feed is difficult to produce. And so there were several batches where they had to go back and redo the production specifically for Magic Small Fish Feed. So it's quality control, and we don't want to sell something that doesn't pass quality control. So that's what it is. And so I
just learned, by the way, my Apple Watch will tell me how far the print is on the Bamboo Lab thing because I have the app. I never saw that till now. I'm like, it let me know, hey, there's only a few minutes left till it's done. So that's pretty cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Nerd.
Super nerd. So, products are coming and I wish it was sooner. And, that's.
I wonder if the Magic Small. So yes, the Magic Small Fish exploded in popularity, but then also because we know that it has a similar quality to live baby brine shrimp, and because we don't have that, maybe that's also like
I think that added a little bit of gas to that fire. Yeah. Like I honestly haven't hatched brine shrimp since we had the magic fish feed, and I've been testing it for a while. So like even months before I wasn't, I'm just like, and I now like the video you'll see coming out. Like I have 2 species of fish that have only ever eaten magic small fish feed that have raised up from egg to, they're not quite sellable size yet, but and normally these are species of fish that I would have hatched baby brine out for. So
and these right here,
kind of cool thing.
These are some samples that we requested of something we've been working on. So got to send these to Corey.
Yeah, I don't even know what that one is.
Today was a good mail day, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff got delivered today.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, are we still stalling for time? How are we doing?
Let me see. 6 minutes, it says. 6 minutes. So
6 minutes.
I feel like it's like,
what about 7 minutes?
Like when something's
just end it now. They don't need to see it. Like doing all this time.
And then it like, oh, I'm just kidding. It's actually this much more.
Yeah.
And wait, are you printing the thing that diffuses the water? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So
just because I wanted
basically that. So like when you're pouring water into a tank with a hose and it goes straight down, and like sometimes people use like a plate to like not upset the substrate. Is that it's just making a spread? Or I guess we'll see it in 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So
yeah, and that's when I wanted to print something I didn't know, because that replicates the new user experience, right?
Right.
I don't know, like, was this file even a good file? Oh man, you guys made this file terrible. Or like, oh, that's not the right hose diameter for what I want to play with. There's a lot of variables to it, but yeah.
So I have a prop. So this is the I think it's Lee's or whatever brand of gravel vac. So this was from like the medium size. So 2 points to make here. This kink is ridiculous. So when we come out with our gravel vac, it's never going to do this. We're going to use the better tubing and have packaging. Like that's a permanent kink. Like I could probably take my DeWalt heat gun and maybe try and fix that, but that's not the customer experience that we want.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is so for my water changes here at the warehouse, since I have to do it manually, the most automated thing that I've put into it is hooking up one of our power heads to a piece of tubing. And so that's been nice, not having to try to hold a 5-gallon bucket and then diffuse the water with my hand while I'm spilling everywhere. And I had this brief moment of, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, where you visualize something and you think it's going to work and you get excited. So the power head strainer, our little cone 2-level strainer thing, I was like, what if that just fit perfectly on the end of the tubing?
Yeah.
And I got so excited and I stuck it on there, and sure, it just blew off. It didn't fit. It wasn't, there was no way to like friction fit it or anything. So
I will say,
I was so excited, and then it didn't happen.
There's a cool thing that on the forum I saw, those like plastic clamps you can put on the rim of a tank, or like if you take the screw out, you can buy at Home Depot. They make these like for PEX tubing, the PEX like plumbing.
Yep.
Like the 90-degree thing that holds it so it won't kink. Well, you just put the screw through that on that thing, and it holds tubing perfectly to go into the tank.
I actually have something.
You need to send me like a Google image of the clamp that you're talking about.
Yeah, just like I've got one in the tank, but just like a normal like plastic clamp. Like if you had to clamp it, if you put a hose in, you want to clamp it into the tank.
Okay, but you're removing a screw from that?
Yeah, so you pull the screw that makes the Y happen. You pull that screw out.
Right.
You put in the thing that holds the PEX, and you put the screw back through it so it holds it. And now you've got something that'll hold it so the hose can never kink and it can't, fall out. And it's got and someone did it on the DIY forum, and I was like, that's genius.
Yeah.
And so you go buy like a $2 part at Home Depot off the shelf, unscrew, screw it back in, and you've got a better hose holder for your Python and everything.
Well, this last time, well, the water change this week, what I did is I just took the heavy ass glass lid with the plant light on it and just smushed it. So I had it. So at least it was coming out at a nice horizontal, so it wasn't pointing down at the substrate. What do you guys think?
Is that what you're talking? Like something
it's
similar?
Something just like that. They make one that will like has a little spot to like hook into it. Yeah.
Right.
But
yeah, so that would be something you could 3D print, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
that is
definitely.
this is it's for a hose, but on fuel jugs. So
Okay.
that my fuel jug has the perfect bend. So I'm not like trying to like if I'm filling a something. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, that's where the 3D modeler comes in, and they go like, that idea is rad, because you can actually 3D print those clamps. There's a way to like use a plastic spring in it, and so you wouldn't have to buy that like a Harbor Freight or whatever. But you get someone that knows what they're doing. All of a sudden, they make this thing, and you're like, yeah, I clicked print, and now I have the thing that holds it, and I have that. Oh, and this thing will keep. They'll fix Randy's problem, and so you get like Jason on the forum. He would listen to this, and he'd be like, I could literally fix these 3 guys' problems in about an hour, and then he'll go through a few versions, and then he'll just put it out, and then you've got this rad thing. But we do have kind of a problem with. I feel like on the internet with 3D printing, there's not a good feedback system / someone sorting through the absolute junk versus the this is genius. And so that's what we've been trying to do on the forum, is kind of like, I've actually printed it. This thing's amazing and well done. Because there's some stuff you just like, yeah, that looks awesome. You're like, this thing's not good. Like this was like, this will do it because the guy or the girl, whoever needed one of them, but this was not optimized.
Well, like on Thingiverse, how does something get popular, right? Like you post something for free on Thingiverse for people to download the STL, and then it's only the people that are going to be sorting by like newest that are going to come across it, and hopefully they download it, print it, and
unless
then rate
you're
it well.
an influencer or something, and you're putting in a video on YouTube and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, like you got to make anything popular. But yeah, sometimes the best solution is not the most popular one. Like the thing I think I was the most like, this is amazing. At the beginning, I printed this little bracket to hold my Apple TV device. And it just hangs on the thing that, like, you hang your TV on the wall, it just hangs on the bracket. So you don't have to like have the wires come down anymore. And I was like, wait, so this thing, and so now all my TVs that had one, which I only had 3, they all have it. That's not true. My living room TV doesn't. So I need to make one for that still. But successful print. I'll be right back. I'm actually loving this because now I'm not going to lose. I wasn't wearing my watch for a long time. I'm not going to lose to like, oh, I didn't print anything for 4 hours. And then you go, dang it, I could have been printing. So I'll be right back.
The efficiency.
Is this our longest episode? Is episode 3 the longest?
Could be.
No, episode 1 was quite long.
Oh, he's still here. I thought he left us. Oh, he's got.
I got the AirPods. Yeah, I'm in the other room. I'm actually telling the person to finish carving it out for me. And
wait, your microphone you're using is the AirPods?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were supposed to have like awesome off-camera mics, and this guy's using his AirPod mic. Jeez Louise.
There he.
Get
usually I would, but it
get out of
problems.
Here, Mr. Audio File.
We're still 2 minutes
This
under
guy.
the episode 1. So
here we go.
All
so
right.
It's on the plate, and these are all the lines it prints to calibrate and make sure that before you start printing this big project, like, yeah, your filament's skewing well and all that. So that goes on down here. And then this is what we actually made. And then you kind of just do this move. And here we go. Now you would take some tubing. Let's see if I got tubing anywhere. I should. Oh. How do we not have tubing? I thought we had those Gravelvac prototypes. Oh, they're right down here. Let's grab some tubing down here. Is this tubing going to work? See, it's not the right size tubing. This is real small tubing, but it probably needs to be like the bigger version. But in theory, you either go right inside or right on the outside, and then
it just splays out.
It's going to come out and hopefully, do that.
Yeah.
So from, if you had that need, and I guess what I'm going to show off is like, look how good that print is. Like that is in my opinion, dang near perfect print.
Yep.
On the bottom. And then if you look at the lines, so you can see like, oh, I can see some lines in that.
Sure.
But, Randy could work on that for an hour and a half, and you could work on the file, and you could get this to be like, oh, it's just so smooth. Or you go like, this will work fine for my daily life in every application. And then this thing also doubles as I printed it out now. And this is what I do half the time. Like Yeah, this actually would be rad for putting an Anubias through it. So you put a
Mhm.
Anubias stem through it, basically, or you zip tie it on, and then this, like we already made these on the forum, but you go this under the gravel now, it just holds it in place. So, yeah.
Pretty cool. All
It'd be
right.
cooler if we had someone live and said, I need to make this thing, and then I just did
Yes.
it, as opposed to like, you printed a thing, Corey. But, you know, the goal was we never printed before. It worked. It was that easy to like, yeah, I click print, and during the episode, we made a thing. And so then you go, oh, it needs to be different. During your next meeting, you print it again with the changes, and you hope that, like, hey, that's what I wanted now. So, yeah. This episode brought to you by Bamboo Labs. Please
There you
sponsor
go.
us.
That's right.
Mhm.
Sponsor us.
Click that, and
We're promoting you on members only content, but yeah, you know.
why not?
Well,
If
they
it's
got to
this-
give us the printers first, right? Before we take
That's
it to
right.
market. So
Well, I already found their marketing email for
right.
contact us for
All
influencers.
right.
There you
So
go. There you go.
Yeah.
we'll get something together.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Well, it's been fun. Let us, as always, let us know what you thought about the episode. Comment down below. We love to read the comments. We actually will sometimes, like, share little screenshots of something that you guys write. And so it's always fun and entertaining for us as well. So thanks again for everything. Thanks for being a member. And don't forget, this Saturday, you will hopefully get a chance to watch the goldfish presentation.
Yeah.
All right.